Bruce Dern must have been pretty frightening in that film.
Bruce Dern actually choked me out one night while we were shooting. He choked me so hard in the scene that I actually had to go to the emergency room. He grabs me and he literally just choked me out. Like I couldn't get a breath, and he just kept it going, and I'm like, I'm tapping out. Yeah, he was definitely a method actor.
Merry Christmas!
Welcome to A Word on Westerns. I love Westerns, and so do you, or you wouldn't be tuning in. I'm so glad you're joining us today because we're going to discuss one of the greatest Westerns ever made. I'm talking about Willpenny. It was written and directed by Tom Gries, and our surprise guest is Button, the little boy who was the major impetus in that film that was also Charlton Heston's favorite movie. Willpenny's Jon Gries. Come on in, John.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Glad you're here. And I do love that movie, and your dad was such a well-respected director. I know people who made films with him and just tell me what a terrific man he was.
He was a good practical joker, too. Yeah. But he was a hell of a writer, yeah. I loved his writing. It's amazing.
Willpenny had so much going for it. Chuck Heston, Ben Johnson, Slim Pickens. Bruce Dern is a great villain, led by the irascible Donald Pleasance.
That's him, all right.
He ain't going nowhere we can't find him. And we just gonna take our own good time about coughing him up.
It just was stunningly photographed up
in Bishop, California, just outside of Bishop, at one point. And my father was he really wanted to try and create as much he was really into the real experience of being in that era in the West, So he was very specific about the wardrobe and that it didn't look like, a lot of the Westerns that we see where it looks almost too haberdashery, but kind of rustic. It was his, you could see the stitches through everything, and it was threadbare, and he just wanted everything to be as real as possible. That's why I never quite understood why he put the score on the movie that he did. But I was never a big fan of the score. I always thought the score, I actually asked somebody at Paramount if they ever rescore that film, just give me a chance,
Who did score it?
David Raxon. And he's a great composer. I just felt like I didn't.
He did Laura.
Yeah.
And got an Oscar for that, but
just.
But the costumes were great. Everybody was terrific in that. And
amazing.
You hadn't acted before. How did you get that part?
I knocked my tooth out is basically what happened. And my father had to take me to the dentist, and we had just moved out from New York, and we rented a house out in Topanga, Malibu area there, and he had to take me to the dentist in Culver City, and he was like, I'm not going to drive all the way back out to the beach. I'm just going to take him to the studio with me. And so we went to Paramount, and, I was like, this is great because I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and I've got alone time with my dad, who's always busy. And so I was sitting with him in his office as he was feverishly typing the final draft of the script, the shooting draft. He had to have the shooting draft ready. And, pecking away as an electric typewriter, and I remember I was just talking to him, and he finally stopped me, and he said, John, I can't talk now. I just have to get this done. Go outside. The Bonanza Street, as he called it at Paramount, the Bonanza Street is empty. Just go. Wander around, play. Don't break any windows. Don't steal anything. Because, when you're a kid and you see how things are on a movie set and you don't understand at all, we were he shot combat all the time. So all the sets were always dilapidated and we'd break glass. And he'd come over, no. So 4 boys, it's always fun. But anyway, so I walked down the hallway and going out the 2 big glass doors, and in come Walter Seltzer and Fred Engel, who were the producers. And they stopped me and they said, are you here with Tommy? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, come with us. They took me into their office. And they just started talking to me about all kinds of things, school kid, kid stuff, girls, sports.
How old were you again?
I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me a Coca-Cola, which I wasn't allowed to have. So it was like, I hit the mother load. This is amazing. I'm having a Coke. I'm sitting with these guys. They're talking to me. Somebody wants to take time. And then they figured out that I was indeed my father's son. And I could hear him. Their office was right next to his, and I could hear him picking away in there. And then they get on the phone and they call him and they say, "Hey, Tommy." And I can hear him through the wall and I can hear him through the phone. And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "We got the kid." And he goes, "Oh, great." He goes, "Yeah, he's right here." "Oh, I'm coming." And I'm sitting there. The door opens. I was like, "Hey, you excuse me." He's like, "What?" He goes, No. He's my son. He's not an actor. He's an idiot." That's exactly. I really want to get a T-shirt made that says, "I'm not an actor. I'm an idiot." So they convinced him to screen test me, and I was really excited about the idea that I was going to get to miss school for a day to screen test. But I hated the idea that I had to memorize lines because I was kind of an idiot. And so I'll never forget, like I show up and there's these other kids and they're all very serious and they're talking about jobs and I recognize them. I'm like, that kid's from Flipper. I'm having these moments where I'm like, I know these kids, and totally overwhelmed, but just kind of not really, I didn't really think much of it. I didn't really care if I got the job. I just was into being where I was in that moment, And then they would all go in and each of them would get done in like 15 minutes. "See you later, piece of cake." And I'm like, ugh. And then of course I go in and I start laughing and I start screwing up. And I'm reading with Chuck Roberson, who is the amazing Chuck Roberson, one of the great stuntmen of all time. He was John Wayne's stuntman. And not that John Wayne really needed a stuntman, but when he became a star, Chuck Roberson became the guy. And then, my father came home that night and he said to my mom, "Don't even worry, it's never going to happen." And my mother was like, "Yeah, because I don't want my son to be an actor, And then the next day, the producers called my dad, said, "Get in here. We want you to take a look at the rushes." And so he went in and then he called my mom and said, "You better get down here." And she came down and she just watched it and she just turned and said, "Okay, I'm making his deal." And that was it. That was it. That's how I got the job.
Wow. That's great. And your father worked well with you during the shoot then?
He did. He did work really well with me. I actually quit in the middle of shooting at one point.
And negotiating for a better deal?
And I remember Joan Hackett was just laughing. She was doubled over laughing. She couldn't believe it. She was like, my whole life I've wanted to quit a movie. And first movie, he quits. But they wanted me to lead this horse. It was a big, big horse, and I was frightened. I mean, I'd ridden horses my whole life, but I'd never seen a horse this big. And my father's like, "You're going to walk across here with that horse, and you're just going to take him over there and tie him up. That's how we're going to open the scene." And I said, "That horse." And he said, "Yeah, you're going to take that horse and just take him over there." And I said, "I quit." And I walked away. That was it. I walked off. And so finally he had the Wranglers, who were all amazing guys. And one of the guys who worked on the film was Casey Tibbs, who was one of the most famous bronc riders of all time. And Casey was a crazy wild man, but certainly taught me how to drink. But I didn't drink. I just watched. But they played, it was amazing. It was like living in a small Western town. And anyway, Casey talked to me with the other Wranglers and, said, "Don't worry, the horse will never step on you." And of course, then everything went back to normal. And my dad was kind of, he was so into what he was doing and he was so easygoing. But at the same time, kind of like a little bit of a mentor. He was, you do it. That kind of thing was just, I was going to perform no matter what,
How many people have you shot?
Well,
I guess there was a few times.
How did it feel?
Bad. Bad scared before and bad sorry after.
Wonderful scenes with Joan Hackett as your mom. She was a fine.
She was really the one who took me under her wing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every night, I had my own hotel room. My father didn't want me to be in his room because he was up late working all the time. And so we were at the Best Western Motel, appropriate place to stay. And Joan Hackett's room was downstairs from mine. My father's was across the hall, one of those upstairs kind of things. And she would just say, down here, you know. And so we would we both lay in her bed and we would go through the script and read the scenes and watch television and just talk. And she was just so kind, and we'd eat dinner together. And she really was, I imagine that if there was any modicum of a performance on my part, it was due to her taking me under her wing. And my father was saying such all the time. He's like, you're saving me here because this is a kid who's never acted.
Willpenny was Chuck Heston's very favorite role of all the movies he did. He had been in such epic dramas as an educated man, and here he can't even read. He wants Joan Hackett to teach him how to read, and he loved that part.
Yeah, and he was great. He was great in that movie. He really was. He was so... he just was so believable for me, you know, and I it was amazing because there were experiences that I had with Charlton Heston doing that film where I got really emotional and I didn't quite understand what was happening. I was getting so wrapped up in the story that I would cry sometimes, and hide it, would never let anybody know that I was crying, these really emotional scenes, I was embarrassed that I was crying because I was a kid, I was like, oh, God, I'm glad my brothers aren't here to see this.
Well, Bruce Dern must have been pretty frightening in that film.
Bruce Dern actually choked me out one night while we were shooting. He choked me so hard in the scene that I actually had to go to the emergency room. Yeah, he was definitely a method actor.
What was that scene?
It was this scene where the Rawhiders, Donald Pleasance and Bruce Dern and can't remember the other actor.
Merry Christmas!
They came and they took over the cabin where we were. And so while I come running out of the bedroom or the little, lean-to kind of room off to the side with a blanket in between, and I come running out like, what's going on? And he grabs me and he literally just choked me out. Like I couldn't get a breath, and he just kept it going, and I'm like, I'm tapping out, So the minute he let go, then of course I really did cry. Yeah.
Wow.
Scared to death. And I got offered a lot of movies after that movie, and I turned them all down. I just turned a lot of work down. I wanted to be home with my brothers, and it was one of those things where, to this day, I'm always afraid to say what I turned down, but I turned down, the Cowboys with John Wayne, and I turned down the Reavers with Steve McQueen, and Bless the Beast and the Children. They kept coming till I was about 13 years old and just turned everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've certainly changed that around because you've done hundreds of movies since then.
Yeah.
One of the busiest character actors out there. It's
pretty good,
And in some top movies too. Taken.
Napoleon Dynamite. And a couple of Westerns along the way. I did September Dawn.
Mormons, do your duty!
Jehovah created me!
With Robert Preston.
Oh, that was September Gun with Robert Preston, and that's an amazing human being if I've ever met. He was incredible.
What made him so incredible?
Just his whole delivery, everything about the way he worked it just smelled of movie star. He was a movie star. There was no other, you've worked around him or you've been around him. My father directed Breakout and Breakheart Pass. My father, Charles Bronson was a movie star. Mm-hmm. Robert Preston was a movie star, but he was much more theatrical and much more outgoing. And God almighty, that man could drink. He could drink. We'd sit down in that bar and he would just put those things every night we were shooting in Tucson. He'd have his 6 or 7 martinis, whatever. And early day tomorrow, get up, walk a straight line out. And everybody would be like, how the hell do you do that? That must be water. Yeah. Must be faking it. But his stories were amazing too.
Well, and you have a series now.
CORP LLC, it's an Adult Swim show, and it's an amazing show. It's
animated too.
Well, it's half animated, and it's rotoscope animation, which is really kind of an unusual thing that apparently there's never been, as old as rotoscope animation is, which is where they film you and then they just draw on top of you. So it's not the kind like they did where they put the suits on you. You're wearing your clothes, and it's the strangest thing. Like there's a guy standing behind me with the fan. He's in the shot, and they're like, don't worry about it. He's going to be drawn right out. Oh, it's Adult Swim, which is the Cartoon Network at night, which is a Turner Network channel. It's one of their many, it's under that umbrella. And
what's the premise? You're Dr. Roberts.
I play Dr. Roberts, and it's basically a doctor who has had his heyday in Silicon Valley. He's now kind of fallen from grace, and he has like a little one-stop shop in a mall where if you come in, he can fix your problems by dream therapy. And in the dreams is when it becomes animated. And I have 2 USB ports on my hand, and I literally go out with you and we go into your dream together, and I walk you through all kinds of your demons. And usually your demons are just too overwhelming for me to deal with. So I'm constantly running away and trying to, he's just a couple floats short of a parade, but he's getting there, It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And it's produced by John Krasinski and Stephen Merchant.
Nice.
And it's a good group of people.
Well, I'm glad I bumped into you while you were walking your dog as I'm doing my morning hike up Runyon Canyon.
All the time. We see each other.
You were a great guest.
Yeah.
I do love your performance in that whole film.
Thank you so much.
Is one of the best.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Good to see you here.
Thanks for watching the show. I'm RJ Word. You already know my dad, Rob, because you were just watching an episode and you stuck around.
And what's interesting is I'm sure you see RJ's name in the credits all the time. Well, he and I now are going to do something together where you can see both of us instead of...
Well, actually...
You can't see either one of us.
You can't see either of us. It's a podcast.
But you'll hear him.
Exactly.
Podcast, it's new for me, but I'm excited about it. We're going to be having a lot of interviews with Western personalities like we've been doing for the past 11 years right here on A Word on Westerns. But now it's A Word on Westerns podcast.
That's more than a third of my life. We've been doing this show for more than a third of my life.
He was in high school when we started at the Autry in 2013, and he used to skip class to come and work as a PA, and now he's bossing me around. Can you believe that?
He was a cool dad, and he takes instruction very well. I'm very proud of him. But our podcast is every Monday.
Every Monday a new one drops. Isn't it up all the time then, and you can access it anytime?
You can access it anytime wherever you find your podcasts or on our new channel, A Word on Westerns podcast.
Sounds good to me.
The links are... I'm going to put it over his face.
He did graduate, too.
Click here.